Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week, we had the great pleasure of speaking with Zarina Prashay. If you did not get a chance to check out that episode, please do. We talked a lot about her card games and how important it is to take digital breaks with your kiddos. And I found the conversation fascinating, and I appreciate every bit of conversation that we had last week. So thank you again, Zarina, for being on the show. This week, I am especially excited to have Miss Samantha Foote on the show. Samantha is a dedicated advocate for neurodivergent communities. She is the founder of Boise Music Therapy Company and the host of a podcast called Every Brain is Different. With a mission to support families navigating the neurodivergence journey, Samantha combines her expertise in music therapy with passion for creating inclusive spaces that promote growth and connection. Through her work, she fosters meaningful change by empowering children and families to harness the therapeutic power of music. Please welcome Samantha to the show. Samantha, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. I know we talked a while ago and we've been trying to get you on the show. And so I'm glad that the moment is finally here and we're able to kind of talk. I'm so excited to be talking about this subject today. But I want, for our listeners listening in, I really want to kind of start by just asking you first about how you first became interested in music therapy and what inspired you to pursue this career.
Yeah, so I was a junior in high school and I was kind of a nerd. So I was like, I need to know what I'm studying in college. And I had played the piano since I was 4 years old. And I'd been in choirs my whole life. I was in band, all this stuff for music. And I didn't want to give that up. I really like psychology and I really like music. And I was like, man, I wish there was some way I could combine music and psychology together. And then I randomly found music therapy on this college review website. And that's what music therapy is. It combines music and psychology together. It uses music in a functional way to accomplish non-musical goals. So that's where I started that journey. And then I just fell in love with it once I got into school. And it's just been like that ever since.
That's awesome. So music has always been a really important part of your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Personally, professionally,
all encompassing. Yeah. That's amazing. And who would have known? Like, I didn't even know that music therapy even existed until I had received my son's diagnosis. I had no idea that there was even such a thing either. So I think for most people that are even new into the special needs community, sometimes they don't even know about therapies like this. So it's kind of funny how you mentioned that because now that we're familiar with it, I don't even think second guess it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh yeah, there's music therapy, but it was a complete unknown to me as well, even entering this realm. And I know you kind of talked a little bit about how it infuses psychology with music, but can you talk a little bit about the primary goals of music therapy, just so that people kind of understand what it really is?
Yeah, so music therapy is just using music to accomplish non-musical goals. We work in the areas of social skills, communication, motor skills, social emotional, and cognitive.
Okay.
That's the areas that I work in. There are other areas of music therapy, like some people work in hospice, some people work in prisons and mental health and hospitals, different places like that. I work with kids who are neurodivergent and adults who are neurodivergent.
Okay.
But there are other areas where people work. And so, yeah, we're just trying to accomplish those goals using music because music can affect the brain more than any other stimulus. It lights up the brain more than anything else. And so, for example, there was a really high profile case that used music therapy. It was Gabby Gifford, and she got a traumatic brain injury.
Yes.
So she used music therapy in her treatment because music therapy was able to access a different part of her brain and make new neural pathways in her brain that allowed her to speak again, allowed her to do the movements that she wanted to do. But it was all because music could access a different part of the brain that was than what was damaged.
That was
So that's
damaged. Yeah.
how music therapy works.
Okay, that's fascinating. And I'm familiar with Gabby Gifford. She's from my hometown. And I grew up in southern Arizona, and I remember reading that about Gabby Gifford. So the really interesting part about that is that really does it matter what age? I mean, is there a particular age to start music therapy? But really, you could start at any age, it sounds like.
Yeah, because of neuroplasticity in the brain, because the brain is
Okay.
able to change throughout life, there's
Yes.
really not an optimal time to start it. It's just you can start anytime. I mean, obviously for kids, like early intervention is the best, like
Right.
before 6 years old,
Of
but you're
course.
still
Yeah.
going to get benefits after that age, where
Yeah.
people used to think that like after 6, you're not going to get any more benefits,
Yeah.
but that's not true.
I know. I remember when I read that once that it was like, well, you stop after a certain age. I think I was reading up on a therapy for Drayson. It might have been ABA therapy, and they said it was the most effective through age 7. And I thought to myself, well, how can that be? Because you can't tell me that our brains stop at that point. Like,
Yeah.
maybe some of us still act that way, but it's like I know I'm not. I just always was fascinated by the neuroplasticity that you're talking about, and I never really thought to put that correlation again with music. And does that have to do with the frequencies or the tones of music? I mean, what is it that makes it so much more, the brain so much more receptive to that?
I think it's all the different parts of music combined. So we
Mm-hmm.
have the rhythm, we have the tones, we have silence, we have singing, we have different, we have harmony, we have melody, and
Mm-hmm.
all those different things combined. I think that's what makes it so much, what affects the brain so much because it's
Mm-hmm.
combining all those different things together.
Yeah, and you're kind of using, I mean, you talked about social emotional motor skills. I mean, does it help with fine and gross motor skills, or is it mostly fine motor skills that are helpful during music therapy?
I've found, well, research shows that it, it can affect both. So
Okay.
gross motor skills, fine motor skills, it doesn't really matter what you're
Okay.
working on. So, for example, there's neurologic music therapy, and it can be used with many different populations, but they use it a lot with stroke patients
Okay.
and patients that, they've had a stroke and so they can't walk very well. And then
Right.
they use music therapy, and you're able to walk at a consistent pace, at a steady pace, where before you kind of like be shuffling along. And
Right.
I don't know, the videos are just super cool. I don't do that work. I work with neurodivergent kids, but the videos are so cool, the before and after using music therapy.
Right.
It's just really cool. So
That's awesome. I love that. And I know we're talking in the realm of special needs. And so what are some of the specific benefits that music therapy for children that have neurodivergent conditions such as even ADHD and autism, what are some of those specific benefits that you've seen from your kiddos?
yeah, I've seen like increased attention, ability for improved social skills. My favorite story from music therapy is this kid came to me and he was 8 years old. He said, "I don't have a best friend. I want a best friend. Everyone else
Oh my
has one."
gosh, that breaks my heart.
I know. And so he had autism. I don't know if he had ADHD, but I know for sure he had autism.
Hmm.
And so we started working on social skills. We improvised on instruments. He had very concrete thinking. So I told him to improvise on different emotions.
Yes.
So act like the instrument is happy. How would it sound? And he's like, instruments can't have feelings. They don't know how it.
Yeah.
And I said, just imagine. And so we helped him with his concrete thinking. And so that translated to, like if someone is sarcastic or
Yes.
someone is saying something that they don't mean or someone isn't being literal when they talk. And so he was able to understand that sometimes people say things that they don't mean. It's not literally what they're saying. They're just like saying an expression or something. And so that helped him with that. And then we talked more about emotions and how, like, if you're feeling this certain way, that's called happy. If you're feeling this way, you know, that's called sad. That's called
Mm-hmm.
mad. And
Mm-hmm.
then he was able to understand those emotions, see those emotions on other people, and just do all those different things. And then about like 3 or 4 months later, he came up to me after we'd been working on all this stuff, and he said, "I have a friend. I made a best friend." And that was like the best
Sweet.
moment in my career.
I know that's got to be amazing. I think that that's one of the biggest concerns I have with Drayson sometimes is that I know he has friends at school, but he's not the type of kid like that he talks about having friends. And so for me as a parent, that's always been kind of a concern or a worry for me. Like I want him to have friends and because he doesn't really talk to me about it, it was funny. We went to his school a couple weeks ago and he was saying hi to everybody. He was like, "Oh, hi, Jonas," or "Hi, Peyton," or "Hi." And I was like, who is this kid? Because I had never seen him do that. And his teacher was like, "Yeah, everybody knows Drayson." And like I thought, okay, well, maybe this kid's a little bit more friendly than I thought. but it's interesting because some moments when I've really connected with Drayson have been through music. And even in the car, letting him play certain songs, like the music, like I noticed the other day, and he's never done this before, he's starting to sing. I've never heard him fully sing. I've heard him kind of whisper sing, but like it's almost building a layer of confidence for him. So, I mean, something as simple for us in the home, playing music has been extremely beneficial for us too, without even realizing. I mean, I had no intention. I wasn't trying to implement any psychology behind it, right? No therapy behind it whatsoever. But I found that it was still a great connection for us. Do you find that with the families that you work with, not just the kids, but their parents too? Is it helpful for them to find a connection with their child through music?
Yeah, so I have found that music is a really non-threatening way to establish
Mm-hmm.
a connection.
Yes.
And, you know, you can share music with each other. You can turn on a song that you both like. You can sing to it. You can dance to it and just share those memories.
Mm-hmm.
And then my favorite thing, this didn't happen with a client, but it was my mom and my sisters. And my sisters are all a lot younger than me, like 13 to 18 years younger than me.
Wow. Okay.
And so they were all teenagers, and I'm like in my late 20s, early 30s. And
Uh-huh.
my mom just, they were fighting like no other. And my mom was like, "I am so done with this." And so she just turned on a song. She turned on Bon Jovi and just started dancing. Just started dancing. And my sisters were like, "What is happening right now?" And then they started dancing. And it didn't take away the the problem that they were arguing about, but it took
Right.
away pressure. And
Yes.
so they were able to talk through it after they got done dancing.
Oh, that is
So
so funny.
it was just really funny. I was like, "What are you doing?" And then it worked though. It made them stop arguing and everyone was laughing and having fun, and then we were able to solve the problem.
Solve the problem, right? And I think that that's amazing because it kind of gave that moment of detachment from the emotional component enough to go, okay, let's. And I think sometimes too, when you start dancing or singing, like I noticed that Drayson, when we were driving home that day and he was singing, I was like, all right, I'm like, I gave him my phone and I let him pick out the music and he was picking out his songs. And I noticed that evening he was more receptive to me. And I think it's because we had that break. I think sometimes I get really siloed in the day to day with him. Like, oh, okay, I've got to run and get him to this therapy. Now he's got, school and he's got this and he's got that, that I forget to maybe take that mental break and have a little bit of fun with my son too. And so it was just this weird kind of impromptu thing that happened in the car, but now it's become a regular thing for us, where I'm letting him pick out the music and we're singing songs. And I'm like, why do you like this song? And see if he can maybe give me a reason and try to draw him out. And I didn't realize that it was affecting us that way. But at the same time, he's also more receptive to me. It's not just mom's telling me what to do. I mean, he was actually like having some fun with it, What advice would you give to parents who are considering music therapy for their kids? Because I've talked to so many parents, and I have a lot of parents that have received overwhelming, reviews and responses from doing music therapy. And then I have some parents that are like, I don't know if it's right for us. So what advice would you give for parents that are maybe thinking about it?
I would say don't expect overnight results. I have so many parents that come to me and they're like, this is a miracle cure that's going to like fix my kid. First of all, neurodivergent kids do not need to be fixed.
Right.
But that's what they think.
Bravo to that. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. They're not going to, if they're non-speaking, I work with a lot of non-speaking kids.
Okay.
They will get speech usually.
Okay.
But it's not going to be overnight. It's going to be over months.
It takes time. Yeah,
it takes time like anything else. It's not going to be an over the night thing that's just going to fix everything in your life.
Yes.
But
yeah.
The other thing I would say is you don't have to be musical. You don't have to like have that musical talent or skill or whatever to participate in music therapy.
Okay.
And music therapy isn't teaching. It's not like I'm going to teach you piano lessons so you can learn how to play the piano.
Yes.
If we do piano lessons, it's going to be to work on attention, to work on fine motor skills, to work on connection, different things like that. So a lot of parents that come to me, they think it's just teaching a skill, where if we do teach that skill, it's for a different reason than just learning the guitar or learning the piano or whatever.
Yeah, and they're not going to come out becoming like Mozart or anything like that. Yeah. Okay. And it's good that you're mentioning that, because I think that was my original thought when I first heard music therapy years ago. That was my original thought. I was like, well, I can see the importance of learning an instrument. I played an instrument. I was in a band, in junior high and into high school. Like I, played a musical instrument. I think I learned a lot of, you learn some critical thinking skills without realizing that you're learning critical thinking skills. So I can see the correlation, but I like that you pinpoint that, because I do think that there is a little bit of a misconception that that they're going to learn an instrument or learn a skill set by playing, and it's not necessarily correlated to that. So it's interesting that you bring that up. I know you've kind of already shared a couple other like memorable stories, but do you have like a big success story where you've noticed the difference, especially like it's impacted maybe the family dynamic for that kiddo?
Yeah, so I am working with this kid right now. He's 5 years old and mostly non-speaking, but through our work, he has been able to say different sounds. He'll start approximating words. And so that's helped him and his family like be able to communicate better.
That's
amazing.
And so
he can say, he says S. He goes S when he wants to say yes. And I was so excited because he's been trying to make the L sound for weeks, like for probably a couple months. And the other day we were singing this song and he made the L sound and it was so cool. And he's signing more and just communicating more. The more a kid can communicate, I found the more that they want to communicate. So if they're non-speaking, if they're not using a device, if they don't have any way of communicating what they want, then they're not really going to try to communicate what they want. They're just going to be frustrated all the time. But when you give them that communication and you give them that ability to communicate, then they're going to try to learn more to communicate more. And so that's just what I'm seeing with this family, that he's able to express himself more. And so there's less frustration.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And I think, too, once they realize that you do understand what they're trying to say, that's a huge moment for them, too. And I would think that it helps with his confidence. We don't think about self-confidence, as a little kid, we don't really talk much about that, right? And so I would think that would also help his confidence, knowing that he can, start to communicate for himself. It's so important. And I don't think sometimes I don't think everybody realizes that. I think now Drayson communicates much better than he did when he was 4 or 5 years old. But I think it was building that confidence piece in him too. And so I can see how music therapy might also help with confidence as well as just the, motor skills and things like that. Have you noticed that in your kids?
Yeah, I've noticed that, especially with social emotional goals, that when kids can understand what they're feeling, they can name that feeling, they can understand what other people are feeling, then they're more confident in social situations, they're more able to make friends, they're more able to socialize, and they don't hang back maybe as much as they would if they didn't understand that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I kind of want to switch gears here for a minute. You were saying also, I also mentioned earlier when I introduced you that you also have a podcast called Every Brain is Different. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And why don't you tell our listeners today a little bit about what that podcast is about?
Yeah, so Every Brain is Different is a podcast that celebrates neurodiversity and then gives positive parenting strategies to parents raising neurodivergent kids. We talk about self-regulation as a parent, and then we also teach about neurodivergence, like sensory processing things and, all the different things that comes with being neurodivergent.
I love that. And you said something about parents self-regulating, which I think is so important because I wish somebody would have told me that when I first received Drayson's diagnosis. I wish, just like when people go to a baby shower, they're like, oh, do you have any advice for the parents? Like, I didn't feel like I got that advice personally for myself. It was like, here's the list of what you need to do. Come back after you've done everything on that list kind of thing. And I think you bring up a really good point because it's the self-regulation piece for me. I didn't realize I was losing myself a little bit when I started really going down these rabbit holes trying to help Drayson. So I think that that's amazing that you bring that to light in your podcast as well. And I think it also helps to approach a situation with more love and grace, which is also an amazing thing because it took me a while to get there too, right? And for those of you listening in today on the show, I will be posting all of her information on the show notes, and she'll be able to, you'll be able to reach out to Samantha at any time. Hi, kiddo. We have a little visitor here behind Samantha for those of you guys listening. Is that your daughter?
Yeah.
Oh,
she wasn't
adorable.
supposed to be home yet. And then they're just like, her behavioral therapist just like shoved her in the door and then left. And I was like, what are you doing?
It's okay. No big deal. Okay. No big deal. But what I was going to say is for those of you guys listening, we'll go ahead and we'll post all of those things in the show notes. So if you'd like to get a hold of Samantha, because you do your music therapy virtually, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I think that that's fantastic because that's going to help so many parents that we have. We have a lot of listeners too. For those of you guys that are interested in music therapy, I highly encourage you to please reach out to Samantha and also check out her podcast, Every Brain is Different. Samantha, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you, and thank you for all your hard work and dedication to this community.
Thank you. It was great being here.
Yes, absolutely. This concludes our episode for today. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you would like to hear about, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you haven't already, or feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Pieces for My Puzzle. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word so that we can help more people out in the community. And if you would like to give us a good rating, we would love that. So feel free to give us a good rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, keep working on your puzzle. And remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.